Hello and welcome to Channel 3 News. Today we have a special report. It's going to be 5 things from back in the Vietnam War. The first people will be Marco. Take it away.
U.S. involvement in Vietnam began when the Eisenhower administration promised military aid and training to South Vietnam's non-communist regiment under the control of Ngo Dinh Diem in return for a stable reform government in the South. But Diem didn't keep his end of the bargain, as he ushered a corrupt government that suppressed opposition and offered little to no land distribution to peasants. Also, Diem, who was a devoted Catholic, angered many of the Vietnamese people when he restricted Buddhist practices. Later, in 1961, when Kennedy became president, he had the power to be with Diem or against his followers. He chose to swim with him. When Kennedy and the Democrats became worried that they might lose power because they were accused of being too soft, they decided not only to increase financial aid to Vietnam, but also send thousands of military advisors to train the Vietnamese troops. In 1963, it was estimated that there was 16,000 U.S. military personnel in South Vietnam.
It turns out that 16,000 was only a beginning. Our next report is from field reporter Vincent. He'll be starting off in the studio and ending off in the field. Vincent.
Even after Congress approved the Tonkin Gulf Resolution, President Johnson has opposed by sending U.S. ground troops to Vietnam. In March 1965, President Johnson had been dispatching tens of thousands of U.S. soldiers to fight in Vietnam. And then that's it. General William Westmore, an American commander in South Vietnam, requested more troops, but he was also less impressed by the fighting ability of the Southern Vietnamese Army, otherwise known as Army of the Republic of Vietnam.
Soldiers! Get yourselves armed!
No, due to the fact the Viet Cong had a lack of high-powered mount Brittany of American forces, Americans later found themselves falling prey to tactics such as a hit and run or ambush.
Save me!
Viet Cong destroyed the notion of a traditional front line by attacking U.S. troops in both cities and countrysides. Some of the enemies lived amongst the civilians, therefore making it hard for American soldiers to detect who is enemy and who is foe.
Try to imagine running through a village, see a family out there, they're all playing nice, leave a cup of tea. Next day, the other one's just chucking their grenades at you. It's fantastic. That's what our boys had to deal with back in Vietnam. Dark days. Meanwhile, back at home, there's quite a bit of unrest. Touching on the subject is our amazing reporter, Jack Jackson. Take it away, Jack.
Hey, Jack Jackson here from Channel 3 News. There sure is some civil unrest in America. Several riots are going on throughout the whole country. These riots are mainly caused by the inequality towards African Americans in the war. 1/5 of American deaths are from African Americans that are only 10% of the military. That's just ridiculous. And that's caused by a massive income gap due to college deferment, which means that those who have enough money to go to universities don't have to go to war. These students are arresting themselves, forming groups such as the SDS and the FSM. These young people aren't able to vote until they're 21, but are able to be drafted at 18, causing them to protest violently. There you go.
There you go, indeed. Jack Jackson, everyone. Now, on to our next report by Jose Robles. Take it away, Jose.
In 1968, during the Vietnamese New Year, an attack called the Tet Offensive was used on the South Vietnamese in Saigon. This influenced the American people to believe the war was unwinnable. This in turn created riots, and they got worse with the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. on April 4th. Then the assassination of Robert Kennedy. Once the new presidential elections came around, it provided a comeback for Richard Nixon, who promised to end the war.
And now for a man whose name is far greater than any you have ever heard before. A man so bold and to finish this report, I give you Jose. Take it away, buddy.
What are your final thoughts on the Vietnam War?
Through my experiences during the war, I can officially say that the Vietnam War is over. I had confirmation that well over 20,000 U.S. troops would be coming back home. And that's a good thing because the war had a major effect on these soldiers, physically and mentally.
What's going to happen to the city of Saigon?
After the U.S. troops fall back, the city will be overrun by the Northern Vietnamese because they will have enough power. And without the U.S. support to the Southern Vietnamese, I do believe that the city will fall.
Do you know if any of the troops will be left behind?
Even though I had confirmation that the U.S. troops would be coming back home, there was a significant amount left behind, and that was due to in order for an attack in Cambodia.
What do you think are going to be effects on the attack in Cambodia?
I do believe that there will be an uproar and protests within colleges because many of these people had enough of the war and they want it to be over. Overall, after the Northern Vietnamese have taken control of most of the country and after the U.S. falls back, many of the Southern Vietnamese will have fled the country. And in the end, I do believe that the Northern Vietnamese have won the war.
The Vietnam War was a war between ideas between two massive countries. Vietnam, supported by Russia, and America, supporting South Vietnam. Sadly, due to the massive amount of knowledge of their own land and the amount of guerrilla warfare that was utilized by the Vietnamese, the American army simply could not gain a foothold. It was this simple fact that meant that America was doomed from day one. In addition, the war was fought mostly by people who were poor or oppressed. And so instead of feeling that they had something to fight for, they just felt that they were fighting some rich white man's war. And to a degree they were right, because for the most part, politicians were simply getting them to go to war so that they could battle an ideology, communism. And America simply had no place in Vietnam. And as a certain movie once said, never start a land war in Asia. This has been Channel 3 News. I've been Jacob Muniz, and I wish you all a great day.